For today, we are covering technical session number 34 for configuring Windows. The bulk of the time, we will be talking about the control panel and the options and functions you can find within it. Objectives that we will be shooting for today will be to describe how you can use the control panel to customize the operating system for a client or yourself. Be able to describe the steps and considerations when configuring Windows for a client, and identify common pitfalls that can occur when configuring Windows and how to solve them. Behavior skills and mindsets we want to keep in mind. Customer focus, as the customer is the main reason we are here. That is our main function is to take care of them. And even if we're unable to solve the problem, be able to provide good enough customer service that they will at least have the feeling that we did everything we could to help them in their issues. Also, maintain a growth mindset. Know that you do not know everything, but you can learn what you put your mind to. All right, first, overview of the control panel. This is often the first place we go to when we are trying to configure our systems to our needs. And this is where we will find the bulk of the settings for the system as we are working on them. It is a centralized location that controls how the Windows itself looks and feels and the functions that are, operable on the system at any given time. The programs that populate in the control panel are called applets, not applications, applets. They allow you to customize the system and to personalize it for each user or organization. And there's a number of applets that each version of Windows kind of has in common. We'll be covering a lot of those here today. There are also applets that are specific to a program or hardware, such as an NVIDIA and Adobe and QuickTime. Although Adobe isn't really supporting the PDF function anymore, I believe. That has become more of an open source program. All right. So here's how you get to the control panel with your 3 different versions. With 7, you go ahead and click start icon, and then you will locate it right there in the start menu. It should be off to the right-hand side. 8 and 8.1, either swipe the right corner of the screen if you have a touch screen, or use the mouse to activate the charms menu. Now with Windows 10, you click start button, scroll until you see Windows System, and you click on it, and it will drop down and show you control panel. All right, locating the applets. Once you open the control panel, there's a couple different methods you can use. You can either use the search bar. You can browse by category, which some people find a little more functional, or you can view all the control panel items in one section in a list. You can have them in, by category, large icons or small icons, depending on your personal preference. Remember, if you go in and you're working on somebody's system, if they have their system set up a certain way and you change it to make it easier for you to maneuver around, be sure to change it back to the way they want before you leave. Otherwise, it is likely you will receive a call to come back and fix what you have changed. Questions so far? All right. Here we go. This is the view once you get into control panel based off of category. As you can see here, you can break it down to user accounts, systems and security, network and internet, and clock, language, region, hardware and sound. So you can kind of see where based on the issues you're having, you can kind of narrow it down to each one of these smaller categories and kind of dive into them a little bit deeper as you need. So some people find this one a lot easier to navigate. And so it is one of the more widely accepted methods. So here is a view of the control panel. It has all of the various applets that you can utilize in the control panel, but it's just in a list showing it in large icons. Next, exact same list, smaller icons. For those of you who are not visually impaired and don't have to wear glasses, this one might be okay for you. But for those of us who it's a little difficult to read very small print, the large icons tend to help us out. All right, category view. There are 8 primary categories. We just kind of talked about this here a little bit. It allows you kind of dive in a little bit, deeper into each one based on the issues that you're having or the things that you're wanting to manipulate. And the 8 are listed above: your system and security, network and internet, hardware and sound, programs, user accounts and family, appearance and personalization, clock language region, and ease of access. Kind of getting into each one individually, we start to look at system security. Here's where you have your action center. So Humberto was talking about, it was in the control panel. Yes, to a degree, it is in here, but they have a quick action reminder in your action center on the bottom right near your systems tray and notification area in the bottom right hand side of your taskbar. You have your Windows firewall, where you will be able to set up what programs are and are not allowed to contact the internet. You would utilize something that's called an access control list to be able to configure firewalls to say, yes, this is allowed, no, this is not allowed. There's a couple different approaches to it. We will be getting into that a little bit later when we talk about networking and security. But for the most part, the way firewalls work in a passive sense is it does not allow communication to be initiated from the outside. Something from the inside of your computer must first reach out to a system, and then when that system responds, the firewall will let it in. But if something is just trying to initiate a conversation from the outside, the firewall will block it. That is a basic passive firewall, how it would operate. All right. Your system allows you to kind of see all the details of your system, the amount of RAM, processor, all those fun stuff, what service pack you're operating under, what exact operating system you have on your system. If you're operating under the 64 or 32-bit architecture, all those fun details will be in your system your system applet. Windows update. This one trips up people a lot because it seems a little bit too on the nose when you're talking about upgrading your system or updating your system. Where would you go in Windows to do updates and see if it's possible and accomplish all of these things? Windows update seems a little bit too easy of an answer, but unfortunately, yes, that is the answer. So please remember that one. Power options. We talked about this a little bit earlier, where you would set your battery settings, hibernation, all that kind of fun stuff. UPS configuration. What does UPS stand for again? Me just setting in a little bit.
Universal power source.
Close.
Uninterruptible power source.
Uninterruptible power supply. There we go. Uninterruptible power supply. So if the power gets cut, it will give you enough battery life. It'll set off an alarm letting you know, hey, I have no power. And that gives you 10 to 15 minutes to close out whatever applications you have, do a full system shutdown so you don't harm your systems. And then when the power comes back on, you can boot right back up. Or if you're doing a firmware update on the, on the BIOS, doing a flash, if you're flashing the BIOS, it will hopefully buy you enough time to finish the upgrade so you do not brick your machine. All right, backup and restore. You can set your restore points in here. These are very valuable tools because they allow you to kind of go back in time. If something bad happens with like settings you've made, or if you put in an upgrade to your system, like if you upgrade to the latest service pack and you lose functionality to a lot of your applications, especially in the business world, if there's proprietary software that you are using in your operations for day-to-day business, you do an update and it locks up that system where it can't be used, that's unacceptable. You need to be able to roll it back and operate on an older service pack until a patch can be made that will allow you to operate your proprietary software, because you do still need to maintain daily operations in business. All right, BitLocker and drive encryption. This is a full drive encryption program, works wonderfully. There is a fun little chip that is soldered down to your motherboard called the TPM. BitLocker communicates with that, and while it is encrypting your drives. And so that basically means that if somebody takes the drives out of your machine and puts them in another machine, that machine's TPM will not be the same. And so it will refuse to decrypt those drives because there is no match. TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module. And that is a security chip that is soldered down to motherboards that allow for BitLocker to do its encryption. It is a security measure. All right. Administrative tools. This is where you would go to see Event Viewer to see your logs, schedule tasks like defragmentation, running virus scans, all that kind of fun stuff. You can go into administrative tools to schedule these tasks to happen during non-peak hours. If you're going to be doing something like defragmenting a hard drive, and that's going to chew up a lot of processing power and slow the computers down, you're not going to want to do that during normal business hours, because that can affect your operations from being able to function at, in an efficient manner. So you can use scheduled tasks to take care of these things at night when, say, operations isn't running. Or if you have people running at night, you could have these operate during the day. You'd have to schedule it for off-peak hours. Questions so far? TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module. It is a chip that is soldered down to the motherboard itself. All right. Now, network and internet under category view. To many of you, this is a very familiar screen. If you've set up your internet or Wi-Fi on your computer itself, this allows you to set up and share printers. Like if you have a printer you want to be able to share it to everybody in the household, you would come here and be able to share that networked printer so others can access it. You can create your home group, which would allow for file sharing and access through everybody in your particular household. And then you have your internet options. How are you going to, what kind of internet are you using? Are you using a POTS line? Are you using fiber optics? Are you using Wi-Fi? What method of internet are you using? If you're connecting to the internet, what is your DHCP server? What's your DNS server? What's your gateway? Wi-Fi, what's the SSID? What's your passphrase? Are you using any type of security? A lot of this is going to be implemented under your internet options. We will get into that in a little bit more detail when we talk about networking, but just understand like internet options would be where you went to establish a lot of these things. Questions so far? All right, that's network and internet. Next, talk about hardware and sound. Devices and printers tend to be a pretty common one. If you've ever had to hook up a new printer in your home office, or even setting one up at your workstation at work, you would come in here and go to devices and printers to be able to locate and utilize those printers. Autoplay, you can change your default settings for media devices. In enterprise settings, you do not necessarily want autoplay on, because hackers and people who are trying to infiltrate your systems will utilize those functions in order to get nasty software embedded in your systems. Sound also can be seen down in your notification area, but here's where it is located in the menu. And you can adjust your volume if you're using speakers, like a surround sound system for your computer, what have you, microphones. This can be adjusted here in sound. Power options, we did talk about that a little bit earlier. Your display settings, if you're using a multi-monitor setup, you can make the text larger or smaller to help with your ease some strain on your eyes if you so choose, and also allow you to connect to projectors and various things like that. Also, Windows Mobility Center. If you are using this computer, moving it around quite a bit, used for presentation and stuff like that, and you'll be jumping from networks and stuff like that, it needs to be aware of that. And then you have HP Power Manager and HP Beats, which is a proprietary for HP. So not something specifically you need to know. All right, category view programs. If you're going to add or remove programs from your system, this is where you would go to do it. It would allow you to either, install or uninstall, and you can guide where you want those programs to be removed. A lot of them have auto run when you install software, so it'll automatically allow you to accomplish these things. But as we said, in an enterprise setting, you do not want auto run necessarily turned on. So here's where you would go to be able to install or remove these programs. And you would have this locked for the most part under the UAC so that your employees don't try to just come in and install their favorite software on there or whatever they want to put on there. Because as we were talking about earlier, what if they want to do a little gaming on the weekends on their laptop and they go ahead and install Valorant on there and it has a full rootkit in there? That could be a major security breach depending on the place where you're working. So it is just better policy to not allow anybody without administrative access to install software on your systems. All right, questions so far? Yes, Rienzi.
So auto run is like a feature that lets you just install whatever you want on the system.
Well, auto run's kind of like if I put a CD in my CD-ROM, it automatically starts playing that CD. It says, hey, I know this is music, and it goes ahead and just starts playing it. Or, hey, I know this is a movie, and goes ahead and starts playing it for you. It's an ease of use thing for people at their homes, but it is a major security risk for computers in a work environment because they could have, auto run, install this program, and, put it, in the background of the system. I want to reformat hard drives. I want to move files around. So an auto run can do a lot of nasty things. It's just best to have it turned off.
So you're saying that in the business setting, it should be turned off, like
Correct. You do not want auto run turned on in a business setting. You want, if somebody's going to run something, they need to physically request it. Yes, Humberto.
Yes. Sometimes when I am downloading a document from the internet, and then the system asks me which program to use to open this page. Okay. And sometimes I don't find the option of the program that I would like to use. So how do you change those defaults that pop up in your window?
Well, I mean, what it can say is you have the default, or you can look for other options. Like if you know it is a text document, you could open up Notepad and try to force it to open in Notepad. It may give you default options, but it might say other, where you can, manually select what you want to use to open it. Because bear in mind, it could just be formatting that it's not familiar with. And so it doesn't necessarily know what to use to open it. So it's just giving you a few options.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have another question, Rienzi? All right, so we're just hanging out. Yeah. All right. All right. Next on our journey, where are we at? 5. User accounts and family. This is where, as an administrator, you'll be able to add other users and accounts, set their authorization levels, what they can and cannot see, what they can and cannot access. This can be put here in user accounts. Parental controls. This is also the place you would go to implement that on any system. If you have children using it and you want to go ahead and put this in place, parental controls can be turned on here. Credential manager. This is where you would go to look and make sure credentials are up to date. When we get into security, we start talking about certificates and certificate holders, as well as public and private keys. A lot of this is maintained in your credential manager. Questions so far? All right. Next, appearance and personalization. This is where you make it look pretty. You can log into your system, you can change the theme, you can set up which gadgets you want to have on your desktop and what not to be there. Again, you see display settings. Some of these functions you see in multiple areas because they fit into these multiple categories, like display, as we talked about earlier. Taskbar and start menu, how does it look? Do you want it on the bottom? Do you want it to be where you scroll the mouse down and it pops up when the mouse is there? Or do you want it locked so it's always permanently there? Does it annoy you to be on the bottom? You want it on the top? You want it on the sides? You can set all of this from your task menu or task bar and start menu and adjust how it looks, as well as ease of access center. Allows you to kind of accommodate for, visually impaired. It also can, you can implement a screen reader, something like that. So if there's text on the screen, it can be initialized so that it'll read. Somebody who is not able to read or maybe blind can read it. Also, there are specialized keyboards that can be utilized that will actually print out text into Braille on the keyboard itself. So there are accommodations that can be made so that people can have more use. And as we were talking about yesterday, where there was a person who was, had trouble seeing in certain spectrums, they were partially colorblind. You can change the feel of the colors. Like if they can't see oranges and reds very much, but they can see the cooler spectrums like the blues and the whites. So you can change it so it's easier for them to see and read what is on the screen. Folder options, you can set it up to where you can have it like a single click open or a double click open. Single click open tends to be a little annoying, especially if somebody comes up and actually double clicks. You open up 2 sets of that same file versus 1. Also, if you're just trying to click and move, it can create issues that way, but some people prefer it. You allow it to show hidden files and folders. Typically, this would be an administrative level where you could have it be where the administrator can see everything that's on there. They may not be able to read it, but they can see everything that's on there. And it would allow other users to see the files. They just wouldn't be able to open or access them. So you can select here whether they would be able to see it at all or just have it hidden. And then your overall fonts and text styles and stuff like that. Anybody who's involved in graphics design knows and understands the importance of fonts because they will have tens of thousands of different font styles to design marketing material for their customers. So people in graphics design are big into fonts. Questions so far on this? All right, clock, language, and region. Here's where you would set where you are located in the world. Sometimes the computer can auto detect based off of local servers where you are, but you can come here and adopt it and change it as you see fit. Also setting your date and time. Some people want it to be auto set. Others may want it to have plus or minus amount of time. Like some people who never want to be late may set their clocks 10 minutes fast so that they're always early when they're trying to arrive to meetings and things like that. So date and time would be where you would make those adjustments. All right. So that brings me to a question. So why would we have the date and time saved in multiple locations? Like you'd have the BIOS date and time versus the operating system date and time. Why do we maintain it in 2 places instead of just keeping 1?
In case one fails.
That's a possible option. Now, say you're a network specialist and you're trying to locate the origin of a malware infection. And think about what I just talked about, where somebody who sets their clock 10 minutes faster in order to not be late somewhere. How would that affect your logs if you're trying to find the origin of a infection?
Yeah, it could throw off, the logs would be completely incorrect.
Yes. So you would have your BIOS clocks, which would be what your logs were kept on. And even then, if you have a very large corporation that spans like around the globe, you would need to, all of them to be on a synchronized clock and a uniform one. So like you could set it to where home office is. So everything is based off of where home office is. So when you're looking at the logs across the entire network, you can see where the origin of the problem is, because if you're dealing with multiple timelines and stuff like that, and you're talking tens of thousands of log entries, you want to be able to narrow that down to a very specific window in order to look at these logs and see where these problems might have occurred. So you would have your operating system one, which would be the front facing, where the user would see it, versus the back end where you're keeping track of everything that has happened. All right. There we go. Ease of access, as we talked about this one a little bit earlier. And then you also have speech recognition. So you could have text or talk to text, which is becoming significantly more usable. Used to be very, very difficult. A lot of times setting it up, you may spend an hour or two reading things so that it could get used to your speech cadence, accent, all that kind of stuff, so that it would know how to properly type out what you speak, what you're speaking. And even then it has its troubles. All right. Now, these are the main ones that CompTIA will focus on with regards to applets that you need to be pretty aware of. We just went over a lot of these just a few minutes ago, but we'll kind of quickly go through them here. And if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to stop me, ask a question as we're going over them. So, internet options, we talked about that. You got your general, how are you hooking up, you have your security, your privacy, various connections that are on your network, programs, and advanced settings that you can dive into. Display settings, you got your resolution, your color depth, and your refresh rate, so that you can get the best out of the monitors that you currently have. User accounts, where you create and manage your users, be able to set their levels of access. Do they have administrative level, or are they just a standard user? Do you need parental controls in place? What user access control might you be implementing so that they cannot affect the use of that system for everybody else? Folder options. We talked about this one a little bit. You can view the hidden files if you are an administrator. You can allow those files to be seen between users or hide them. You'll be able to hide the extensions on the files as well. And then you have your general file options like read, write, execute, which we will get into a little bit later. And then other options. System gives you the details and breakdowns of the system you're currently using, chipset, around RAM, what architecture operating off of, 32 bits versus 64, what service pack you're running, and what operating system you have. Firewall is one of the aspects of internet security. And this is a hardware, or should be a software version of it. All right, power options. Talked about that a little bit. Get into hibernate, power plans, sleep and suspend, and standby. All of this can be set up here to allow you to get greater usage out of the batteries and your systems. And program features, where you can add and remove programs to your systems. Home group. Not available in Windows 7 Starter, but it allows you to share files among your household utilizing 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. And those files that you're sharing cannot extend outside the group. Devices and printers, we talked about sound, troubleshooting. Briefly mentioned this one this morning in the Kahoot helps you provide a interface to solve common issues that may arise when you're using your Windows system. All right, and then we have the Network Sharing Center. Allows you to share your printers and other devices as well. And then you have your device manager itself, where you manage all peripherals, drivers, all that fun stuff to make sure that they stay functioning.
Could you go back one slide real quick, please?
The slideshow only goes in one direction. All right. There we go.
Let's see. It's lagging.
Yeah, give it just a second or two.
I got it. Thanks.
Excellent. Any other questions?
So with those hidden files that you can bring up in your file folder, is it best to keep them hidden? Because I did the exercise where you can make them appear last night.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, on an administrative level, you're going to be able to gain access to these. But where it's useful is like if you have one standard user, being able to hide it from another standard user. So, but on an administrative level, you should be able to make them visible so you can see them. It's another security feature. It's harder for somebody to access files when they don't even know what the name of that file is. It's called security through obscurity.
Did you say security through obscurity?
Yes, that is a method of security. It's harder for people to break into things when they can't fully see what they are. It's not the most robust method of security, but it is a method of security. But we'll get into that a little bit later in the cohort, probably in about 2 weeks, I think. All right. Now, here's all the commands you can utilize to get into your applets. If you're running in the search menu, you can just type in these fun little commands and it will take you right to that application and open it up. It is a nice long list. Do I need to know all these things? Do I need to memorize this long list of commands on how I get there? No. Is it useful? Yes. So for the exam, no. For life, the more you use these things, knowing the quick commands to get to them, it becomes helpful. So, but over time, using them over and over and over again, you'll get to know them pretty quickly. It saves you having to search, run through the menus, or do all that fun stuff. You can just jump right into the program you need to get what you need to done. All right. Cautions and considerations. One of the best ways to prevent catastrophic changes being made to your system and control panels, applets, is to restrict access through UAC. What does UAC stand for?
User access control.
User access control. So it basically does exactly what it says it does. It is controlling the access of users so they can't go into the control panel, add new hard drives to the system, add wireless access points to your network, add or remove security settings, turn off your firewalls. All of these things that can be dangerous, install programs on there that, they think are innocent, but actually do cause damage, moving files around, changing the names of files, destroying files. All of this can be prevented through user access control. When we are talking about security measures within an enterprise environment, one of the main things you need to take into account is called the principle of least privilege, meaning anybody in the organization has the bare minimum access that they need to function. No more. You want to minimize the amount of harm that can be done by each individual. So it's called the principle of least privilege. We will talk about that more later when we get into security. Restore points. We talked about this earlier. It says that it is automatically turned on, but in my experience, it is not turned on. You need to manually go in and turn this on. Creating restore points on your computer is a good idea. Just in case something happens, you can kind of go back to a previous point in time, resetting all those settings and removing any programs that might have been installed or name changes that may have occurred, and kind of prevent catastrophe. So it's good to have them set up to where you're getting a couple restore points a week, you know, and then before you make any major change, like installing a new operating system, a new huge service pack or anything like that, go ahead and create a restore point right then and there. That way, if something goes wrong, you can just jump back to that previous restore point and save yourself a lot of headache. So, and then planned backups for your systems, full backups and things of that nature. We will talk about the different types of backups there are, when they would be implemented, and how you would utilize them in your day-to-day activities. All right, user access control. We talked about this a little bit more. It's how you would restrict the activities of individual users to a point where they cannot do harm to the systems or have access to things that they should not have access to. A lot of this, now you may think it is a lot of work going around to each system as you're putting, you know, users into it and setting up all the things that they should be allowed to see and things that they shouldn't be allowed to see or have access to each and every time. Well, good news is they have group policy, which allows you to do it based on the parts of the organization that they're working in. You know, accounting people need certain levels of access. They need to be able to access certain servers. They need to be able to see certain files and be able to approve or decline payment to vendors, customers, or employees. Then you would have they would have completely different access requirements than, say, HR or operations or sales. So rather than setting up each individual person based on their needs, you would create group policies based on the type of employee you're dealing with. Makes it a lot faster, a lot easier, and you would generally create images of, or templates for each of these types of groups to make it a much faster install. And it also mitigates the chance that you would make a mistake and not grant them access, or grant them access to too much. Now, if you're going to look for it in the toolbar, GP edit or group policy edit. Questions so far? All right. And one of the main things, obviously, you would want to do is prohibit users access to the control panel, or minimize what they're able to change. Maybe allow them to change their displays or their backgrounds and something like that. Minimal things, but not necessarily add or remove programs, change your firewall settings, install or a variety of other things that you don't want them to actually mess with. Questions so far? All right, a couple of optional slides. With that, we should be able to describe how you can use the control panel to customize the operating system for your client or yourself. The key steps and considerations when you're doing this, as well as some common pitfalls that may occur when configuring them along the way. Now, there are some good labs in Test Out where you'll be dealing with the control panel pretty heavily. And I think there are also some pretty good labs in Coursera that you'll be working with as well. So any questions with regards to this?